All right, so today we're going to look at the Middle Ages. We're going to look at it with maps. So we're going to be jumping around from time period to time period. But usually, when we think of the Middle Ages, we have these ideas based on stories and movies about knights in shining armor and castles with moats and towers. But exactly when were the Middle Ages? And the Middle Ages were roughly a 1,000 year period of time that started from the fall of the Roman Empire, the fall of the Western Roman Empire to be particular, and the continues on for 1,000 years from there to like the 14th and 15th centuries. And it's really the time period that connects the world of Rome and Europe during antiquity, and it connects it to the Europe that emerges in the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries. Now, the Middle Ages are broadly divided into three major sections. We have the early Middle Ages, which is from the fall of the Western Roman Empire to about the year 1000. The High Middle Ages, which was a high point for the Middle Ages in Europe, which goes from about the year 1000 to the year 1300. She's gone today. And the Late Middle Ages, which gets us to the 15th century, and it's considered not that pleasant of a time to live in Europe, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So let's just start with what Europe looked like right around the fall of the Western Roman Empire. As you can see here, this map is referring to the period between 476, when a guy named Odoacer takes over Rome. That was right around 493, and you can see that the Eastern Roman Empire over here is still intact, but the Western Roman Empire is quite fragmented, and it's split up amongst all these different Germanic kingdoms. You have the Visigoths, the Franks. You have the kingdom of Odoacer. You have the Ostrogoths, and so over here is Constantinople, which is in present-day Turkey. It's now called Istanbul, but when it was Constantinople, it was the capital of the Byzantine Empire under an emperor named Justinian. So you had the East Byzantine or Byzantium at Constantinople, and then you had the West, which was the Western Roman Empire, which fell, and it's fragmented amongst all these different Germanic tribes at this point. Okay, so here we fast forward to the year 814, and a major event that occurred during this time was that a guy named Charlemagne, king of the Franks, was crowned the Holy Roman Emperor. And this is his territory here in green. You can see that he conquered areas, part of modern-day northern Italy. He has parts of modern-day France, much of modern-day Germany, Switzerland, the Netherlands, Belgium. Charlemagne is able to unify much of Western Europe. And a lot of our ideas about kings and queens and castles and knights begin to emerge around the time of Charlemagne. He was a Holy Roman Emperor because he was able to provide protection to the Pope, the head of the Catholic Church. And the Pope says, hey, I'm just going to say that you're continuing on with the legacy of the Roman Empire. So Charlemagne, kind of got a little street cred because he was tied into that idea of this old Roman Empire. Now, another major feature of the early Middle Ages, as you can see on this map, is that Islam in the 7th and 8th centuries comes out of Arabia and is able to conquer much of the Middle East and Persia and North Africa, which you can't see on this map. But much of what we consider to be modern day Spain, too, is under Muslim control. So if we fast forward to the High Middle Ages, we're here in the year 1135. You can already see some interesting things on this map. The Holy Roman Empire under Charlemagne, which was rather unified, is now quite fragmented. The Western third is now the Kingdom of France, right here. And the Eastern two-thirds is now considered the Roman Germanic Empire, and they also call it the Holy Roman Empire again. But this is under a guy named Otto. So he was a German. Now, the other thing that you see here on this map is that the Byzantine Empire is continuing to lose territory. Here's Constantinople right here. This territory here in yellow, this is all territory that was taken over by Muslims. So Islam coming from the Arabian Peninsula and taking over land. And it's the Seljuk Turks, which we get the modern day name for Turkey from. They've taken over a lot of territory. Like I said, they haven't taken over Constantinople, which is right here. I think I pointed up here before, but I was wrong. It's right here. So this is the Byzantine Empire. Has shrunken quite a bit. So this is also a time when Christian leaders in the West were asked for help to take back some of this territory from the Muslims. And so they sent these crusades from the West into the East to try to take back this territory. Now, the interesting thing is, so they were fighting for this holy land with these Muslims, people who practice Islam. And instead of giving some of the territory that they get back, instead of giving it back to the Byzantines, they just set up these crusader kingdoms. And you can see some of them here in blue. They even got out there during one crusade and they sacked Constantinople, which wasn't even controlled by the Muslims. So they basically took it from Christians that were already in control, and they just took it as their own. And these were the people that they were asking for help from. So, who needs enemies when you've got friends like that, right? Despite all this going on, the Middle Ages, or the High Middle Ages, were considered a high point for the Middle Ages for living in Europe. There was farming technology, there was better weather, so there was increased agricultural productivity at this time, pretty decent time, all things considered, to be in Europe. On this last map, things are starting to look like the Europe that we are familiar with in the 14th century. This Iberian Peninsula, where present-day Spain and Turkey are reclaimed from the Muslims. Constantinople eventually falls, and that is actually taken over by Muslims, the Seljuk Turks, and they take the capital city of Constantinople, they rename it Istanbul, and it's still Istanbul, Turkey to this day. So down here. Not that pleasant of a time to live. The 100-Year War between France and England was going on. We had the bubonic plague, which we'll learn about later in upcoming weeks. So that kills 50 million people, roughly 60% of the population at the time. There's famine. Weather cycles are getting